Welcome to the David Thompson University Center's MacGregor Gallery. This afternoon, we'll present a work of 36 artists from Suzhou, which is in the People's Republic of China, and a collection of stamps. I'm Shelle Zuback, and my guest this afternoon is Russ McArthur, who'll give me a hand in describing what and where and how the evolution of these works of art. So, we'll start out with the map to tell you exactly whereabouts Suzhou is. Russ?
Yes, Suzhou is a small city, although it's big perhaps by our standards, but small by Chinese standards. Just about 150 kilometers due west, or close to due west of Shanghai.
Step on the other side, Shelle, and get a better shot of the map. That's good.
As you can see here, the Yangtze River comes down close to Shanghai, and this is all the delta of the Yangtze. So it's very flat country, very rich for growing food crops. And Suzhou is on, or very, very close to the Grand Canal, the famous canal which runs up close to Peking. And as we'll see in the pictures themselves, Suzhou is very much like Venice in Italy, full of canals, and people move around the city often in boats, and we'll see those in the pictures as we go.
Yes, a lot of water is depicted in this art. So, we shall start out with a print.
Perhaps you'd like to have the point.
The style of the print, the nature of it. It's block prints done in the wash technique. The ink is applied to the wet rice paper as you get the hazy background effects. Note the detail. They're very spontaneous and very quick about the way they cut out the block and then apply it. This is the 7th print out of 20 prints. You can see it's probably a harvest scene in the fall called Fruit Trees.
And those are probably in Suzhou. Not all the pictures are, but all the artists, I believe, are from Suzhou.
So now we'll look at a watercolor. Here we have the spontaneity of the brush, just very, very similar to our watercolor technique. The ink applied, very deft strokes. Much like their calligraphy, their writing, their painting follows suit in the same styles. The wash applied, of course, on the wet rice paper, much akin to our watercolor paper. This one's entitled Long Corridor in Autumn. The corridor would be in a garden, yes?
Yes, and there might even be a waterway here. Mm-hmm. But you get the misty scene that's so common in China. And of course, in China, a lot of the work is done with the same type of brush which is used for the calligraphy, and the calligraphy is an integral part of the drawing and is supposed to be as beautiful as the drawing itself, and as you can see, the calligraphy is truly beautiful.
Yes, it fits right in. Now something that's not so traditional. Their beginnings, their startings, to adapt to Western forms of painting. Oil paint is not readily used in China, and it does not follow suit with their brush strokes as in the watercolor. This is canal. Suzhou has many canals. It's well depicted. Perhaps, what time of the day would you say?
I would think this was evening, and perhaps that's the moon.
Yeah, the light on the water. And it's nicely put down there.
You can see that you'd almost think it was Venice, and obviously the artist who did this was using some of the European masters to probably to learn his technique from. Eventually, of course, they will learn their own oil technique, but at present it's a very new thing for them, as you were saying.
It doesn't have that smoothness and the instantaneous reaction of watercolor. They can't just get immediate results with oil, so they have to work up to it.
No, they do the watercolors very quickly. Sometimes it only takes them 10 or 15 minutes to do a whole watercolor. Incredible. But not so with the oils, I'm sure.
So we'll look at more of the garden scenes in the watercolor. And now we're looking at more wash paintings with the ink and the color. This is the pavilion at the humble administrator's house, the little pavilion here. Oh, that much looks like a spring scene. You can see the birds returning. Perhaps that's what it says in some of the calligraphy.
Several times here we see this humble administrator's cottage or something, and it obviously wasn't a very humble administrator. Probably these were built several hundred years ago, and they're really quite luxurious. Beautiful little pagodas in the garden, and it must have been a lovely place to be a humble administrator.
Ah, yes. And here the scenery on the outskirts of Suzhou. That's quite beautiful. I can really identify the bamboo growing and the lotuses in the water. I think that's what those are.
Yes, I imagine. Could be.
Yes. So, and the next, flowers in the backyard. That looks like a typical scene of where many people would be congregated, living, an abode. Of course, the pagoda in the background, the temple.
The tile roofs are very common, of course, with the upsloping ends to, I guess, to keep the tiles from sliding off.
Keep all the rain going off the roof.
But you can see how crowded the housing is there.
And our last of the watercolors for now. Rowboat and spring water. The new plants growing. Maybe insects depicted. Looks like a whole family in the rowboat.
Yes, it could even be a work party of some kind. I notice they have a bucket here. Of course, they harvest a great many fish. Every waterway in China, the canals, the fields themselves, when they're flooded, the rice paddies, they grow fish in them. And then they harvest them before they drain the rice paddies sometimes.
That's pretty handy.
So they harvest a tremendous number of fish.
Right. We shall move on and look at some more prints. Print here. Tiger Hill was perhaps done with maybe 3, maybe 4 blocks. Very simple use of colors. Seems to be a junk in the foreground here. Is that what that would be?
Yes, I believe it is. You can see the sails. And of course, with the Grand Canal there, they do have a lot of junk traffic through there, a lot of barges too. It's interesting that they have these names. They love tiger and lion and so on, but if you think back to the time of Marco Polo, I don't know if any people saw the show of Marco Polo, but they were hunting. Genghis Khan was hunting tigers in this area probably at that time.
That's the way I feel.
Here we have an oil painting, more of the Western culture moving in, entitled Snow. I guess in Suzhou they do have snow.
Yes, indeed.
Quite a bit, maybe almost like over here.
Well, it's considerably warmer there than it is here, but they do get snow, usually wet snow, and it can be very chilly. And usually at that latitude in China, they don't have the houses heated, so it can be quite cold in the wintertime.
Yes.
They love spring.
That's when all the blossoms come up. Another painting, The Evening at the Humble Administrator's Garden. pavilion's all lit. It almost looks festive. I love the wash technique and the reflection on the water. How the paper adds to the effects of the sky, the water. Letting the colors of the lights bleed into the evening. And the dark of the ink used in with the painting.
You can see that this humble administrator must have been one of the mandarins who ran that part of China, because he certainly had a beautiful home and gardens, pavilions everywhere. And nowadays, of course, the people use all these. They have the chance to visit all these places, and you see them picnicking there in the summer. They have a good time there.
Yes, it looks like a nice gathering place. Our next one, a print. The Dawn at Lingyan Temple. Oh, that would be 3 blocks, 3 wood blocks cut. The foreground with the people. The second behind it, and the last hazy one on the wet paper, mellowing to get that hazy effect, like the fog they do have there.
They do have a great deal of fog, yes.
Yeah, maybe the canal's right down here, where the haze is the brightest. The sun going away. The lightness is quite deft coming in. It identifies the times of day very clearly on all of the prints and the watercolors. And under the stone bridge. The stone bridge, this would be what they'd be referring to, a large bridge which they went across the canals by foot. This would be a considerably larger one. Looks like there's a small walkway. The blocks in this one, the wood blocks, are cut quite intricately. The detail is, you have to look closely to perceive all of it. Even the little bits of writing on this person's, what appears to be writing on this person's backpack.
It could even be an art, maybe she was an artist, and she was carrying paper.
Here's a little stool and a bag. Maybe she was painting the scenery.
Could be. You can see that this is has quite a modern look. The girls' clothes have quite a lot of color in them, and this girl here is wearing a fairly snug-fitting garment, so they're not the old sloppy blue coveralls they were wearing a few years ago. And she has a bright parasol as well.
No, these seem to be back to tradition. It's nice to see that aspect of history coming back for all of us to view.
Yeah.
It's quite enjoyable. It's much nicer than seeing a factory scene.
You can see why the arches have to be quite high, because sailboats quite often pass through on these canals.
Oh, those large vessels that we looked at.
Yes, this wouldn't be a very large one here, but it would. They'd have to have room for some masts.
So moving on to another watercolor, the new Ode to Pipa. What they talk about here is perhaps they're having a class. The pipa is this musical instrument. And the class, down here we see the waterway, perhaps in the middle of town.
And someone's even fishing here. Kind of nice to see. But there is this class of musicians here, and those of us who were lucky enough to hear the 2 Chinese musicians who visited here heard a really magnificent performance on the pipa. And
Yes.
I believe you have one, you were saying.
Yes. And the next fishery village in Taihu, how would you say that, Russ? Taihu?
Taihu Lake.
Taihu Lake.
Yes.
Yes,
And,
I'm not clear on the
I
pronunciation.
think it means big lake.
You can see the rice paddy. Very simple technique, almost primitive, stating this area and defining this area.
And I suspect that the purpose of the fence here is probably they can close areas off and catch the fish in them.
Oh.
They have a regular schedule of harvesting the fish every 2 or 3 years.
Oh. The perspective is very interesting in that. It's quite pleasing to look at, even being primitive. It's a simple way to state things, to brush. Here we have the garden scene. The incredible amount of detail in these. They depict small children playing in the garden, and they look like aspects of winter and spring. See the blossoms in the top one. Cherry blossoms?
Yes, or they could be cherry blossoms, yes, I think. Very likely.
In the bottom, looks like oranges.
Yes.
Many, many growing. I guess that's the way it is over there.
So these could have been, no, these are 2 different gardens, aren't they?
Yes, unless this one's the other side of that garden.
Yes, it could be.
Probably not. 2 different ones.
But you can see the kids here having a great time in the snow. And here they're skipping. And really enjoying the garden. These could be taken through a circular window in the house, because you do get scenes like that looking through the moon windows, as they call them.
Oh, I don't know if you can quite see that this one, the one with the snow, is actually done on paper with little sparkles in it.
Yes, right.
You have to get very close. I'm not sure if the camera can pick up.
It does sparkle.
That's really a nice touch, though.
Yes, it is.
The paper adds to their art. So, here we have another watercolor. Sampans in Taihu Lake. That's large water vessels, boats. And this would be somebody's house. I love the colors used. This one has a bit more color. It's not restricted exclusively to a single color and ink. It's the ink and a few. Someone looking out to sea. Lends to your imagination, a bit of writing here and scene moving.
Yes, you get the misty effect of the distance there. And again, the sharply upcurved tile roof there.
A print here, spring night. My, that's certainly a beautiful one with the moon and the boats in the harbor there, in the lake. And you can see the big stone bridge in the distance. Boy, that distance one, that's quite nice. Very simple yet very descriptive. There's the temple, the bridge, the detail. Very simple but still easy to perceive. The blossoms, definitely spring night.
Yes. Yes, that's one of my favorites. I'd love to have that one. It's interesting how the Chinese so often will put a temple right up on the peak of one of their hills. And it just seems to blend the architectural features right in with the natural features of the countryside. And of course their bridges too, which are very utilitarian, built that way so the boats can go through them. But at the same time, they blend so beautifully into the natural scenery.
Our next one, watercolor with ink, Lotus Garden. My, there certainly is a lot of detail in this one. Even the fine work of the leaves, probably very quickly applied once again. This is a nice tone of green. Perhaps spring once again, or maybe summer. Looks like there's a lot of dense greenery now.
And the lotus is growing all through the waterways,
Yes.
opening up in the day and closing up at night.
They close at night? Oh, I didn't know. two more of the watercolors with the ink. The cliff by Tiger Hill depicts quite a bit of traditionalism. A little garden house, you might say, and the stream coming through. It's more like what you would have seen in the Chinese art many, many, many years ago. This follows suit. Depicts the beauty of nature.
These vertical cliffs are very typical of the Chinese countryside. In South China, they're usually limestone and they're big caves, but these could be volcanic material, I don't know. But again, you see how the calligraphy blends right in with the picture itself and forms a part of the art. The stamp here is the artist's stamp. That's what he puts
the
on.
identification.
Yeah, that's his.
Yes.
His,
they look important. They're being read. Significant.
Yeah, right.
Yes. And this
That's
one.
his chalk.
Oh. The next one, Suzhou Garden. I love the way the watercolors and the inks have depicted these tree trunks in the foreground. They look rough. They look like very large trees.
Yes. And
This garden in particular, from previous paintings, and it's also depicted on the stamps we're going to show. Must be sort of like a park, a landmark?
yes. And again, the calligraphy fits right in with the picture.
Oh, almost looks like plants.
Almost looks like grass, yes.
Here we have another print, Moon Night. Of course, because the full moon's out. Wash in the cobalt, the color of blue, and probably what they find in the earth to make the color. Adds to the heavy night scene, hazy, very deep. They're on their way home.
Yes, you can see how much like Venice it is with the waterways right in among the houses everywhere, and houses crowded together. Almost any Chinese city that I have been in is the houses are very crowded together.
They seem to use every bit of the space.
Yes, they do.
Speaking of waterway, we have another oil. Quite modern, from 1981. They're coming out with the use of the oil. Now this really looks like Venice.
Yes, it certainly does. The even bridges across between the houses.
Yes, it is quite similar though. Very, 3 stories?
Yes. Looks as if quite a bit of this was done with a knife.
Oh yes, some palette knife work. This is done by applying it, large bits, moving the palette knife to get the direction of the water.
Right,
Almost like
yeah.
Western technique. It'll be interesting to see what evolves with oil paint.
Yes,
in the
as they
future.
develop their skills with oil paint, I'm sure it'll be different, and yet it'll be different from their own traditional art as well.
Now we'll take a look at some stamps.
These are stamps, and the first group we have here are all of Guilin, which is one of the most famous beauty spots in China. It's on the Li River. These are caves along the Li River, and you can actually walk in paths down right beside the river and walk into the caves, and you get these beautiful vistas of the further down the river. These are the typical Sugarloaf Mountains of South China. This is one of the southmost provinces of China, and you have the Sugarloaf Mountains, typical limestone karst scenery. Here you have a Sugarloaf Mountain and the river down below and the boats. Typical high cliffs, very high cliffs, sometimes 1,000 feet almost straight down to the river. And where there is soil, of course, very rich vegetation. Again, typical cliff scenery.
Yes, they were
Those are
very
lovely.
much like the paintings we were looking at.
Yes. Shelle,
Yes, these are-
maybe you would like to talk about the stamps down below there.
Yes, following the tradition again, an artist from many, many years ago. Very authentic Chinese painting. Very few colors, similar to what we were viewing here today. And the style using ink. There are very many here. You could have a look at all of them. This one with the kingfisher, it's quite simple. Very easy defined. You could see what the artist was trying to convey through the movement of his brush. And even the shape of the stamps. The scroll. Very simple similar to a full-size work of art. The flowers, the shrimp. Perhaps pomegranates? Yes. And now up here, the opera masks. Yes, they're from 1980. Perhaps that was an anniversary.
And those are sort of traditional opera masks. There are certain traditional masks that are used depicting the various characters in the opera.
Yes, and these are plant trees, 1980. These 4 stamps. They're a depiction of, I guess, a reforestation project.
Probably.
Yes. And wildlife, deers. And right from the origin of our art show, the
Suzhou.
Suzhou Gardens. Oh, those are very beautiful. Yeah. Yes, they represent different times of the year, like spring, winter, summer, or fall? Fall and winter, yeah. Very colorful.
And then you have a group of athletic stamps depicting athletes.
Yes, the first anniversary of China's return to the International Olympics. The archery. I like the ones on the bottom, the 4 lotuses. Those really look like traditional art.
Chinese are doing very well now in diving, of course, in table tennis, which is their most famous sport. It's not pictured there, but they're
Ping
very
pong.
big in table tennis or ping pong, and they're becoming ranking very high now in the balancing and the various other forms of gymnastics.
Now we'll move over to our next frame of stamps. Oh, there's one of a ping pong tournament. Yeah, it is the Afro-Asian Ping Pong Goodwill Tournament. Oh, I really enjoy ping pong. And these are depicting sports and achievement. Ping pong, that's ping pong. Yes. These are all sporting stamps, sports events, basketball. Oh.
They do very well in handball and basketball too.
Yes.
And of course ballet down in the next set.
Very bright colors. Here we have a ping pong tournament.
Where? I didn't see that. Right there?
This one?
Okay. I thought that was ballet. Okay. Yeah, that is a ping pong tournament. Yeah, okay, keep going.
The red flag canal, that's these 4. different depictions. What is the Red Canal, Russ?
Well, it's a canal. Of course, it's just a name given to a canal that they've built. I think on the Yellow River, a tributary of the Yellow River. Then the next set down is taken from some of their famous opera ballets of recent years, but about 10 or 15 years ago they were big. One of them was the Red Detachment of Women. I think that one there is from the Red Detachment of Women. Mm-hmm. And this one is from the White-Haired Girl, I think.
Yeah, modern dance theater.
Yes.
Oh, yes.
They're not doing those ballets as much now as they were a few years ago.
And Chinese women, the last three. Now we move up here to look at some relics. Excavated during the Cultural Revolution, 1973. There's 2 rows of them.
Yes, these are some of the beautiful relics that were excavated from grave mounds in the last 20 years.
Oh, yes. You have the ceramics, and would that be bronze or ivory?
Probably bronze. Mm-hmm. It might be gold.
Yes, it's hard to tell from the stamp.
And of course, the famous Chinese horses.
Oh, yes. Well, the form of sculpture is very flowy, just like the painting.
And this is the ting, the sacrificial urn that was used in almost prehistoric China.
Oh, bronze, I guess.
Yes.
Made out of metal.
Yes.
And these 2 are, is that what those are as well?
Yes, I think so. I think those are all of religious
Yeah, this is an incense burning utensil. That's what it looks like. Mm-hmm. The next are children's song and dance. They look like the spontaneous effect of the woodblock cut. Perhaps that method of printing was used for the original of these little prints here. From 1973.
And then some more
ping
athletics.
pong. Yeah, that's the ping pong friendship tournament. Yes, all of these, 1973. And then we have the industrial products of China. People's Republic of China. Yes. And the trade fair. And 25th anniversary of the founding of the People's Republic of China, 1974. Commemorative. Well, incredibly detailed works of art, and they're so tiny to get very close to see them.
Yes.
Thank you for being with us today at the MacGregor Gallery. I'd like to thank my guest, Russ McArthur.